Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This one is all about my tips on transitioning your child into childcare or daycare. Now, to give you a bit of context, I have a son who is now almost 21 months old. He started childcare when he was around 10 months old, and he's now doing really well. He's really enjoying going. He eats well and he sleeps well there. So here are my tips to you if you are about to start childcare or if you're looking into it and you're feeling a bit anxious. Hopefully these tips will help. Definitely give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. So my very first tip is, before you have even gotten to the stage of putting your child in childcare, is to actually get on a waiting list or get on a few waiting lists nice and early. Now this situation will obviously change depending on where you're from. I'm from Melbourne and I waited until after Emmanuel was born and after a good few months before I started looking at childcare centres, and that was almost too late because I put him down for like 6 different centres and I only got one vacancy pop up when I actually needed it. So if you want to be able to have choice, I would definitely recommend you doing that before your baby arrives so that you've got that sorted. Now, secondly, while you're doing your research, you want to ask a couple of really important questions. The first one being about staff. You want to ask them how long their staff have been there and if they use agency staff. Because if they have a high turnover or if they use agency staff all the time or different casual staff all the time, that means that your child is not going to get familiar with the educators there. And I feel like that is an absolute key to getting them comfortable and transitioned into childcare, is to have the consistent educators there each day. Another thing you want to ask is about routines. Some childcare centres will strictly follow their own routines, and some are more willing to actually ask you what your child's routine is and follow their routine. And it also depends on how important this is to you. This was super important for me because Emmanuel was a really good sleeper, but only after we had put in some work and sleep trained him. So he was on a really good routine that worked well for him, and I wanted to make sure that going to childcare wouldn't ruin that all or undo all of that, and they were happy to follow his routine. So that was super important. Now, in saying that, they do get busy or things might happen or they might forget, the time that your child is supposed to go down, or they might forget to wake them up when they're supposed to wake up and things like that. And that did happen to us at the start. There's going to be a few teething problems. Just always keep on top of it. My recommendation is to not be shy to remind them. There would be times where I would even call the centre and be that parent to ask them, why is my child not down for his morning nap yet? Just stay on top of it so that your child is in the best sort of environment possible for him or her to thrive. Might want to ask also how they actually communicate with parents. I know that some childcare centres will write on the board, like for example, what time they went to bed or how long their nap was, or how many servings of their lunch or breakfast that they ate. Our one actually has an app where they have notifications for that. And I find that really, really useful, especially in the transition time when your child is still getting used to going to childcare. It's not just them, but it's you. Like, you are likely going to be so anxious wondering how they're going. And if you're at work, you're probably worrying about them. Like, that was me anyway. I was like constantly worried about him and how he was doing at childcare. But the fact that I was getting notifications and I could see that, he was eating his breakfast. He had 1 serving of breakfast. He had gone down for his nap. He had done his full morning nap. And those sorts of things were quite reassuring. Or on the contrary, if they were putting him down at the wrong times, then I would know that they were putting him down at the wrong time, and I would be able to call them and correct that or ask them why, and that sort of thing. Okay, now once you've chosen your childcare centre and you're getting ready for your child to go to childcare, the first thing you want to do is label everything. For Emmanuel's clothes, I actually use a stamp to label. It was sent to me and I do recommend it. I would just recommend that you stamp and wash it so that the excess ink is washed off before your child wears it, because it can sort of rub off on their skin if you don't do that. Otherwise, the stamps work really well for clothing. For things like drink bottles, You can use one of those traditional label makers, but if you're going to keep washing your bottle, especially in a dishwasher, then it's not going to last forever. So you might want to invest in those specific childcare labels or school labels that you can find online. Now, one of the things I was so anxious about was whether or not my child was going to nap at childcare. And like I said, I had been through quite a bit of work to get him to where he was, to be a good sleeper, to be a good napper. And I was so scared that that was going to be all undone when I put him into childcare. But because he had strong sleep associations, I was able to pack them in his bag. That was also a question I asked in advance too, to ask that they would actually use them. So I always pack a sleeping bag and I always pack a sound machine, and they use both for his naps. At that point in time, I also packed his nap time book. When it was time for him to nap, they would actually read that book to him too, which I think is really awesome for a childcare centre to do that, because that's quite a sort of tailored service, but they were happy to do that. They're now at the point where they don't need to do that, but they still do use his sound machine and sleeping bag every single time. And even though he was in a completely different environment, that definitely helped him to nap. His very first time that they put him down, he actually did fall asleep. I was so convinced he wasn't going to. It was a very short nap, but that to me was an absolute win, and it didn't take too long for him to have really good naps at childcare. Now, it's likely that your childcare will have orientation. Ours had 2 orientations that were 1 hour each, and that was really handy. But once your child actually starts going officially, you might want to start doing shorter days if you want. What we did was we actually made sure that he had breakfast at home first before we dropped him off, just so that we knew that when we dropped him off, he would be happy and fed, rather than going into a new environment to eat his breakfast, which he may not eat if he was unsettled. Now, in saying that, we have been very lucky in that his transition was very, very smooth. Even though he's not great with strangers, somehow his transition into childcare was quite seamless. There may have been a few tears at the very start, but they didn't last long at all. And it's really easy to drop him off. But if your child is unsettled and not doing really well at drop off, you might want to consider doing shorter days. Now let's talk about your approach to dropping them off. You can either stay and linger, and if they let you, you can, go into the room and linger around, or you can do the whole dump and go. And I think it really depends on your child how they will respond to those approaches. I feel like for Emmanuel, he responded quite well to the dump and go approach because we weren't there. Whereas sometimes if your child can see that you're there, then all they want is to be with you. So if they can see that you're there, but you're off in the distance and they have to hang out with some stranger, that might actually upset them even more. So if you just go, it might actually give them more of a chance to actually settle in without the distraction of knowing that you are still there. Just think about what your approach will be. Obviously, if you think your child is going to do better if you linger around for a bit, then do that. You know your child best. Now, when it comes to deciding how many days or what days to book your child in, if you're in a position where you don't necessarily need to book them in for 5 days a week and you're thinking about what to do, I would actually recommend booking them in for at least more than once a week, because once a week is actually really difficult for your child to get settled in, to get used to the routine and just used to that environment, because they're doing it once and then they have to wait 7 more days until they do it again. That can be really, really difficult. So we have Emmanuel in 3 days a week, and they're 3 consecutive days. I feel like that helped a lot with his transition, because for 3 days straight, he would just, have that same daily routine, and it would allow him to get used to it, allow him to get used to the educators. So just have a think about what you do there. Now, this is a big one. Be prepared for sickness. Ever since we put him into childcare, he was just getting sick all the time. I feel like it's something you can't avoid. If you decide to keep them out of childcare and wait till they're going to school or going to kindergarten, I feel like you'd get the same issue then. So you might as well get it over and done with now. They do get sick a lot because obviously there's lots of germs. They all put things in their mouths. It's just something you can't avoid, but just try and prepare for it. So if you are going to be working or going back to work at the same time, you might need to be prepared to actually take lots of sick leave to look after your sick child because they're going to get sick so often. It might be a good idea to actually speak to your partner or have some backup family members on days that your child is booked into childcare so that if they're sick, you've got someone that can look after them. Or you have some sort of agreement between you and your partner on who's going to take that time off to look after them. Now, because they're going to get sick so often, I would also recommend that you start hitting the vitamins and hitting the vitamins hard so that your own immune system will be stronger so that you're also not getting sick from them. Now, I did not follow my own advice. I don't really like to take vitamins if I don't have to. So I always got sick at the very start when he was getting sick too. Now we're at a point where he's not getting sick every single week. Well, actually, we've just been through winter and winter was tough. He was getting sick a lot in winter, but I feel like we've just gotten over that. And we've had a good 5 weeks of no sickness, which is great. When I say that, he still has a permanent runny nose. Ever since he's gone into childcare, it's just permanent runny nose. But if he's happy, he's thriving, he's eating, he's his normal self, then to us, he's not sick. Now, because they do get sick a lot, especially in that first year of childcare, if you're in the position where you don't need to book them in 5 days a week, I would try and avoid that because in Australia anyway, even if they're sick, you still need to pay for that for your childcare fees. So if you can avoid it, then do, because you're likely to be paying for a lot of days that they're sick. But I get that not everyone has that luxury. On a similar note, try to avoid booking them in on a Monday because Mondays are typically days where there's lots of public holidays, which is a day that you also still need to pay for. So if you can avoid it, then do. All right, so that's all my childcare tips. I hope you found it useful. Follow me on Instagram if you don't already because I post a lot on my Insta stories, including lots of mummy content and recipes for toddlers and things like that. Also check out my other videos if you haven't already. Thumbs up this video if you found it useful. Leave a comment down below and let me know when your child is going to start childcare and if you have any other advice for other parents as well. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.